No, such a tragedy about Robin Williams. What was one of your favorite movies that he had?
One of my favorites, I would think, would be "What Dreams May Come." It was
Mm,
the. Have you heard of that one?
it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Yeah.
Really? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, one of my favorites by him. I think it was just very heavy and it covered a lot of different things. I think in terms of family, loss and grief, definitely suicide as well, depression. A very good movie.
It was funny. It was thoughtful. It was a great love story, and
Hmm.
I guess it tells a whole. It told like a whole lot of the different aspects of Robin Williams' personality and his ups and downs, and how depression of you know was in his life because of his loss of his wife, his
Hmm.
medication to get her back so he can feel complete again. That was so crazy. That movie was awesome.
One of my all-time favorites by him.
Yeah, but they didn't talk about the one on the news. They didn't talk about Popeye.
Yeah, and I don't know why.
Well, as much as we love Popeye, as much as we love Robin Williams, that movie
The
was
two,
awful. Yeah,
the two just don't go together, right?
that's true. All right, I think we should start the show. I think we're live.
Okay.
All right, so welcome back, everybody. My name's Charlie Maverick. This is This Crazy World. No pun intended with this topic that we're going to talk about today. To keep me honest, to keep everything serious, and to keep the facts flowing, I want to invite a longtime friend to the show and a licensed therapist that can keep it real in the most positive way imaginable. Tiffany Hugans, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Long time since we spoke. We both hail from South Kakalaki,
That's right.
and so tell people a little bit about yourself, what you do in your daily occupation.
Definitely. Well, as it was stated, I am a licensed professional counselor. I currently am in private practice in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I cover mainly loss and grief is my main focus. That covers a lot of life transitions. I definitely do talk a lot with clients in regards to stress, anxiety, depression, as well as work-life balance. So I cover a lot of different topics on my day-to-day, uh, just kind of work basis.
Yeah. So how often do you have someone that comes into your office that has just experienced, like maybe a month or so, just experienced loss?
I would say about 75% of my clientele is dealing with some type of loss. I know a lot of times we think of loss just as death, but a lot of times I do talk with individuals who are experiencing different types of losses, not just death related. It could be transitional as far as losing their job, different changes in regards to children and moving, divorce. So I cover a lot of different types of losses within my practice, but I would say about 75% are dealing with some type of loss.
And that stems or that goes into the whole conversation of depression and
Hmm.
the loss that they experience, whatever type it is, triggers a state of depression, which you help them cope with, help them deal with, and turn things around, correct?
Correct, correct. A lot of what I do when I work with my clients, I really meet them where they are and walk with them through whatever they are experiencing. So a lot of that is dealing with a lot of uncomfortable feelings, walking with them as they process a lot of life experiences that may have led them down the path of depression, anxiety, or stress related, endeavors.
So the whole reason why we're doing this show is because of the sad news of Robin Williams passing because of alleged suicide. The toxicologies and everything hasn't come back yet, but the evidence that we see right now shows
Hmm.
that it was suicide. And this is more of an awareness. So with mental illness, with depression, with people that are at a state of wanting to commit suicide, we as a culture kind of dismiss the signs of depression just by them like, okay, you're sad, you'll get through it, it'll be okay, and we kind of sweep it under the rug. It's kind of like some people see it as being ashamed to alert people that they're feeling this type of way because they might be committed. There might be some type of scrutinization in society. Somebody might like, oh, get away from me, you're too negative, and be shunned from their inner circle. So, what are the most common signs of depression that we need to basically identify in everyday life with interacting with other people?
Okay. Some of the common signs of depression that you can typically see either in yourself or in other individuals. Well, I think one, just a depressed kind of mood where you're very lethargic, feeling hopeless, changes in eating and sleeping patterns. And a lot of times, even for children who are feeling depressed, sometimes that comes out in the expression of anger or irritability, just because with children, their emotional development is not on the same level as adults. So whereas an adult can say, yes, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling depressed, a child may not have the ability to express that. So a lot of times theirs come out in their behaviors, and a lot of times that is anger or irritability. So along with that, lethargy, lack of energy, just a diminished interest in activities, and maybe activities that they used to enjoy don't bring the same type of pleasure as before. So those are some of the common signs of depression. And I would say also that in women and in men, it may look different. With men, a lot of times, men are not socialized to express their emotions or be in touch with their emotions the same way that women are. So sometimes for men, you may see them immerse themselves in activities. So they may withdraw from other areas of their life, but they may, really, be involved in fishing or some type of hobby or some type of activity. And so that may be a sign to look out for in men when it comes to symptoms of depression.
So what you've basically discussed was possibly everyone in the world. So do you feel like at a certain level, does everyone experience some sort of depression?
Some sort of depression in terms of there's a scale, I say, of our feelings. So you have sadness, and then you move along the scale, and you could have major depression. So definitely in life we have those ups and downs. We have those feelings of sadness. I think one of the main differences when we talk about depression, depression isn't just one of those things that comes and goes very quickly. In order to be diagnosed as clinically depressed, symptoms have to be present for a minimum of 2 weeks. And so all of those symptoms that I described earlier have to be present at least for 2 weeks consecutively. And so that's one thing to be aware of, that we often toss around the word depressed. I'm feeling depressed, or I am depressed. And it's a little bit more weighty than what we really give credit to, where a lot of us are just having a bad day, or we're feeling sad, something that we may come out of rather quickly. So I think that's one important thing to recognize, that there is a difference between, sadness and being depressed or having clinical depression.
So this whole nature versus nurture thing that applies to a lot of aspects of life,
Mm-hmm.
how we learn, how we behave, how we learn to behave in society. So in terms of depression or a certain level of depressed state of mind, how much of it do you feel is what stems from what happens in life
Mm-hmm.
versus something chemical?
I think it's a combination. If we look at it, definitely when we think of, depression, and what I've seen in my practice, a lot of it is the thoughts that we have around what happens to us in life. And I think that definitely makes a difference. A lot of our thoughts do dictate our feelings and how we respond to situations. But also with that, there is the chemical piece to it. If you think of someone who is, depressed and they're not getting that physical activity, they're not going outside, that can definitely, have an effect on them as far as that serotonin not being released. Exercise is a great way to help someone who is coping with depression because you get that physical activity, you're getting those endorphins. So I think it plays a part on both aspects, but I definitely don't think it's just one or the other. I think it all meshes together.
So it's a definite combination of both of them. Um, so when we think about how people are down,
Hmm.
are depressed, feeling like they're alone. Um, when it comes down to that person feeling like no one's listening, no one's knows how they feel,
Hmm.
how can we communicate to them that this affects more than just them? So my question would be, as in the holistic aspect of it, who does depression affect?
Depression affects everybody, not just the individual who is suffering from depression, but also their friends, their families, maybe not in the same way. But definitely, if you have a parent who is depressed and experiencing depression, they may not be as involved with their children. They may not be able to engage with their children. So definitely that child is being affected. Likewise, if you have an individual who may not be able to function at work the same way, their productivity is being jeopardized, and that affects the employer and the functionality at work. So everyone, in a sense, is affected by depression in a way.
Do you think that people are ashamed to admit that they're suffering from depression?
Definitely. I think a lot of people are scared of being labeled. In my practice, I think about the first 15 minutes or so, people are trying to convince me they're not crazy because, just because of that stigma of, well, if I see a therapist, then there's something mentally wrong with me and I don't want to be seen as crazy or have that type of label placed upon me. So I definitely think that people are not as willing to admit that they're feeling depressed. And I think alongside of that is that fear of being seen as weak, of not being able to handle situations or not being able to arise above certain circumstances. So I definitely think that there is some shame when it comes to depression as well as other mental illnesses.
And that's the sad part about it. So you see everyone suffering from something. Everyone goes through something. And and people are cruel. And
Hmm.
so there could be a depressed person that's kind of on a higher level of depression than the person that they're making fun of or criticizing about saying that they're depressed,
Hmm.
because to make them seem stronger, to make them seem like to make them feel better about themselves, or what really goes on in the human psyche to where they know that they're depressed.
Hmm.
They can associate to the feelings that, or relate to the feelings that the other person is having, rather than help the person or team together. Strength is in numbers. Why do people of like mind, I guess you can say, or
Hmm.
like emotion, why do they still keep, you know, just treat them like, okay, so let me put into a comparison or an
Okay.
example. You have someone, and I'm sorry to bring this up, but you have someone that is homosexual,
Hmm.
like the governor, our senator, from up north a couple of years ago. So he criticized people for coming out the closet and that they're gay. As time progressed, we figured out that he also was homosexual. So,
Hmm.
and that kind of goes with the whole depression thing and how people treat other people that are going through things. Why do you think people like have the automatic nature to do that?
I think it's the not wanting to be associated with something that isn't good. wanting to keep themselves separate. And I think just as society as a whole, society isn't very understanding of different people and not very forgiving either. We see that across the board in lots of different circumstances. We just aren't as forgiving as we would like to be forgiven for certain things. So I think people try to keep themselves separate from things that we see are a stigma. Okay, so this is a stigma. This is what's going on. Well, let me make sure that I'm all the way on the other side of that. And so I think that's where a lot of people fall when it comes to, especially mental illnesses. Again, no one wants to be seen as crazy or, they don't have it together. Definitely because you hear a lot of jokes about, being put in a crazy house. You hear all these jokes. So why would you want to be associated with something that is seen as a whole as negative?
Good answer. I totally understand where you're coming from with that. So leading into another, segueing into something which goes along with depression. You have people that are ashamed. You have people that want to hide the fact that they're suffering from depression to bring themselves up and to make themselves feel fun. What do they do besides coming to you and professionals like you? They self-medicate, right?
Oh, yes, they do.
Okay. So what are the most common types of self-medication for people that are in a constant depressed state?
I think most of the common ones, of course, are drugs and alcohol. But I've seen also with especially younger adults, sex is used as a means to cope with depression, and also food, emotional eating and whatnot. So I think those four are the most common that I've seen as far as, self-medicating and trying to cope on their own with feelings of depression.
The cries out for help to keep people from, okay, so people want to be heard while they're still ashamed that they are depressed. They're self-medicating. They really don't want to self-medicate. They want the help from people that say they love them, but at the end of the day, they feel like they're by themselves. So the self-medication isn't that in turn a cry for help? Isn't that one of the signs like, hey, I know you're on some stuff. Maybe you're going through something. You're drinking a lot. You're smoking a lot. You're snorting cocaine that you never did before. You're doing all these unusual activities that you didn't used to do. Aren't those signs or signs that somebody's going through a depressed state if they just pick up a new hobby, all of a sudden pick up a new substance abuse, and the follow-up with that is, why do people ignore it?
Okay. I think definitely people who do self-medicate or use different type of unhealthy coping mechanisms, with that, sometimes it's not that they just started drinking, but maybe it's a slight increase in drinking. Maybe it's a slight increase in, eating or drugs. And sometimes that can be hard to detect if you're not really engaged in a person's life. There are many people who suffer silently with depression. They're at home drinking and doing all of these things, but they're still able to go out the house and present, as a functional adult. So it's definitely something to be aware of if you see these major changes in friends and family members, as far as, okay, they're drinking a little bit more than usual, or they're eating dramatically less than usual. Definitely paying attention to that and being able to talk to them out of concern, as far as, okay, I've noticed this change in behavior in you, but I think a lot of people don't do that because they're uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable with the heavy emotion of depression. We try to steer away again from things that don't make us feel good, and so a lot of times it's more about that person feeling uncomfortable. That's all. Okay, if I ask, if I say this, can I handle what may come?
So going back to substance addiction,
Hmm.
and you touched on something that people like to feel good, make themselves feel good. Chemically, if you can, no, we didn't kind of outline this part, but
Hmm.
chemically, can you kind of explain or elaborate how drug, substance, alcohol, marijuana, harder drugs
Hmm.
can chemically alter your depressed state for a short amount of time?
Definitely. Well, first, with alcohol, alcohol is a natural depressant. So you have people who are drinking alcohol, they're in a depressed state, they want to feel good, they want to stop the pain. A lot of people who go to drugs and alcohol, they just want to stop the pain just for a little bit. So they go to alcohol, and I'm using alcohol because alcohol is a natural depressant. So you're depressed, you're drinking alcohol,
Hmm.
you're becoming more depressed. You're drinking more alcohol. So it's this cycle that really just puts you in a bad place. And yes, you do have that feeling of being tipsy or being drunk where you don't really feel anymore after a certain point in time of how much you drank. So yeah, you are numb, but then you wake up the next morning, whatever you were dealing with the night before is still there.
Exactly. So, for those people that don't self medicate
Hmm.
and that put on a mask of humor, of enthusiasm, um, how did those people, how do you feel those people keep their depression hidden so well that people don't take them seriously when they actually are sad? Like, for me, I know someone close to me, not going to
Hmm.
name names, but suffers from depression. And I, because of loss in my life, I
Hmm.
suffer from depression from time to time. I drink. Well, the funny thing is, it's a depressant, but I don't feel depressed when I drink it. I feel good.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but I'm always jolly. People at my job and around me always say, "Oh, you're always happy," and I'll never show how I'm feeling, how I'm really feeling. So, how do people like me and the person that's real close to me, how do they keep their depression hidden so well? Is it the fear of being outcast, being made fun of?
I think it's a fear of, like I said, being labeled, but I think it's also the lack of understanding or having someone that really understands them. You may have someone that is going through a loss and experiencing depression, sadness, and may talk to someone, and someone tells them, "Oh, well, why are you feeling sad about that? Don't feel sad," or at least they give all these words of they're supposed to be encouragement but really aren't helpful, so that tends to lead a person, okay, well, I'm not going to talk to you. No one understands. So I think for a lot of people, it's kind of being aware of what type of message you're sending to different individuals who may be feeling down and out, because a lot of people may not come out and say, hey, I'm depressed, but there may be things that you can see in them as far as, okay, maybe they're not laughing as much, maybe they aren't as joyful, and letting that be okay to allow people to have those down days instead of, like I said, being uncomfortable with the sadness and trying to, cover it up with jokes, or trying to negate their feelings in the moment.
So, with people that self medicate or
Hmm.
put on a mask to hide their depression, um, that leads me into a question that is basically, is is counseling, is therapy um, for everyone, anyone?
It's for anyone in the terms that anyone who is open to the process, can benefit from it. Some people are not open to counseling, so they're not going to be engaged. They're not going to give 100%. They're not going to do the work that it takes within the counseling process. And also, you have to have the right match. I think definitely the counseling relationship, the relationship between the therapist and the client makes the biggest difference. So definitely finding an individual that you feel comfortable with and confident that can walk with you through whatever situation. I think that makes the biggest difference. But it definitely can be beneficial for anyone who is willing to do the work.
For those who aren't willing, okay, so you have segments of people. You have those that self-medicate.
Mm-hmm.
You have those that seek help, professional help. You have those that put on a mask, and you have a mixture of them all in this nice little melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
But some people want to stop self-medicating. Some people want to stop putting on the mask. Some people still don't want to go to professional help.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there anything that they can do in their everyday life to kind of counterbalance the imbalance that they feel when they're feeling that they're hitting rock bottom? Because when you're feeling depressed, I know
Mm-hmm.
from experience, if when you're feeling depressed, it's a constant, but you have your great days, you have your okay days, and
Mm-hmm.
you have your really sucky days. But compared to what you think is a an actual great day, inside you feel like, well, I had a great day, but it still sucked because I'm still sad. But it was a
Right.
lot better than last week. So,
Mm-hmm.
is there something that, like a practice or words that people can say to themselves? Do something like the little things to pick them up, to keep them at a more even level consistently?
Um, when you're dealing with clinical depression, and again, there's a difference between that clinical depression and sadness as you're reacting to just natural circumstances in life. For clinical depression, sometimes it's not that easy just to kind of give yourself affirmations, because even in the affirmation, you're still kind of negative, you're still kind of pessimistic in that. So yeah, you can give yourself affirmations, but there's still a little bit more that needs to be dealt with to kind of help you get out of that state of depression, or kind of help you learn how to navigate through your depression. But just as a general practice, I always tell people, yes, your day may, not be where you want it to be. You may not be where you want to be in life, but try to identify some of those things that you are grateful for. Identify things that do give you joy or bring you happiness. And sometimes being able to find those things and identify those things may help just kind of get you through a moment, until you're able to get to your primary care physician or your therapist, or your pastor or your confidant, or whoever it is. Just finding those things to kind of get you through just at least that moment.
So for people that are of liked emotion and depression, I know that people that they group together. So people that are going through addictions,
Mm-hmm.
AA meetings, whatever, they group together. They find their match, their person, their partner, in the effort to cure themselves of their addiction. Now, in terms of depression, would you say that it's best that you always surround yourself with a person that is motivated to try to dig themselves out of whatever state they're in? Because you're depressed, you're clinically depressed, but there's some people that are want to be motivated to not feel that way, and some people just sit there and waste away. So in terms of that, this is kind of all over question, but
Mm-hmm.
but I know for myself. Before you answer, I know for myself when I am alone,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm at my lowest state
Okay.
because I have time to hear myself think out loud. And my mother always said, quietness kills. The devil's gonna get you in your mind if you don't stay focused on the good, right? So, and silence is loud
Mm-hmm.
because everything you're thinking about is just being heard right back to you. Like you're sitting in a room, you're banging out the music, and you're not in the soundproof room. You're in this hollow room, so everything is bouncing back to you and hitting you. Your eardrums are hurting, and it's just the same thing with your thoughts. So I know for me, when I'm around people, that makes me feel wonderful because then I can make an attempt to self-medicate my sadness by making people laugh.
Mhm.
And I say that for two things. I totally skewed from the question, but
You're
two
okay.
things. I looked at Robin Williams, the special they had on 2020 with Robin Williams, and I said I told that little story for a reason because I paid a lot of attention to what they said. Okay, so he committed his suicide while he was alone, which most people do. But when he is around people, when he was ever around someone, you could never tell that he was depressed. He was always on cloud nine. It was you had to pull Robin Williams back sometimes because he was so out there. He was going. One word can trigger him going on a tangent for 20 minutes, and you would just hysterically laugh.
Mhm.
But when he was alone for that short amount of time, that's all he needed. I don't know if it was planned, but that's all he needed. He had his show canceled. And I love that show. He was losing his house.
Mhm.
He was going back to rehab because he was dealing with addiction again, and he was at a very depressed state. And that quiet time where everything could seep into his brain and feed back into him, he heard all of that, and he just couldn't take it. So going back to the question,
Okay.
I'm trying here, trying. Uh, so going back to the question, would you suggest that people, when they feel alone, that nobody cares, should they try their best to at least be around somebody, that anybody, like not just be alone? Because a part of depression, a part of a type of depression is isolation.
Mhm.
And I believe I suffer from the one that isolation triggers and magnifies it. So do you think that those type people should definitely find a place in a group or and with another person that may be going through the same thing? Is it okay to even be with around someone that's going through the same type of depression? Or are you going to drag each other down? Or are you going to make each other happy? What do you feel about that? And good luck with answering that.
I'm gonna try my best. So with what you're saying, definitely isolation is a part of depression. You don't want to be around individuals. Sometimes it's because you don't have the energy to entertain, other people. So I think it's finding a balance, because sometimes isolation can be good so that you can, okay, what's going on? How can I identify what's going on in my mind? What is possibly causing? What are the thoughts I'm having that's causing maybe these feelings of depression? So I think it's finding a balance, but I think more than just kind of being around people, because you can be around people, but you still have to go back home,
Right.
right? So I think more than just surrounding yourself with people, you need to talk to somebody. I think that's more important. Whatever it is, just being able to talk to somebody, because a lot of times we have thoughts, and because we think these thoughts, we feel as though they're true. And we have millions of thoughts throughout the day, and we don't act on every single thought that we have. So all of the thoughts that we have are not true, but a lot of times because we think them, we think, okay, well, I thought this, so this must be true. Well, I'm thinking that there's no way out. Well, there must be no way out. And then sometimes we create events to feed what we already have told ourselves. So, oh yeah, so this happened. Yep, that goes right back to what I've already thought about being hopeless or being a failure, or nothing working out, or my life is just a constant event of disappointment. So I think being able to talk to someone that you can trust, someone that'll listen, I think that's more important than just surrounding yourself with people, because you can be around people, being in a group, but still feel isolated, still feel alone. You may see these people having a good time, being joyous, and that may trigger you, like, you know what? why am I here? I'm not having a good time. And so I think, being aware of yourself, being aware of your feelings, being aware of your triggers, but I think most importantly, talking through whatever it is that you're experiencing in the moment.
You were successful at answering that question.
I try.
Congratulations. I didn't know if you were going to make it through that. I honestly didn't know. Um, so here's the tough part.
hmm
What are the signs that someone is getting to the point to where they want to commit suicide?
Very good question. Sometimes it's hard to tell because, again, a lot of people aren't talking about what they're experiencing. So sometimes it's hard to tell when someone is to the point where they want to end their life. But typically, if someone is kind of planning out suicide, they may begin to give away important items. They may be getting their affairs in order, making changes to insurance policies, different things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they may make comments about, well, you'll miss me when I'm gone, or, different things like that about no longer being around. Also being preoccupied with death and dying, in a sense, other than just being afraid to die, but, they really, talk about death and dying to an extent. Those are some ways that might be a clue that, hey, someone is experiencing suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts.
When is it too late to bring someone back from feeling that way? If you can identify those signs in a person, is it ever too late?
I think as long as a person is alive, it's never too late for anything. So if you're willing, and I think one of the struggles is that people are scared of suicide. If
Yeah.
someone brings up, you know what, I'm really sad. I don't know if I should, just make it one more day. I don't know if I should be here. That scares people,
Hmm.
and so I think it sometimes scares them to a point where they don't act. They'll brush it off. Oh, whatever. It's taken as a joke. And I recommend anytime if someone says anything about suicide, take it seriously because you never know. You never know.
Yeah.
Um, and I forgot where I was going with that.
Well,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
remember in church, growing up in the church, the pastors, whatever, they always have a biblical reason why you shouldn't do anything.
hmm
And I believe that in the black communities, especially, the pastors, I don't know about the other communities because I didn't grow up in it, but the pastors in the black community, churches, always reiterated the fact that if you commit suicide, you're going to hell.
hmm hmm
And that scared people shitless.
hmm
And is that the proper way? I don't, that's totally opinion
hmm
based and totally how you feel about it. But do you think that instilling fear because of the based on where you're going in the afterlife
hmm
is going to keep that person from ending their life?
Well, for some people, the fear works to where they've had suicidal thoughts, but you know what, their religious faith kind of weighs a little bit more heavily. For some people, they're living hell on earth, so it really doesn't matter.
Great answer.
So I definitely wouldn't use that if someone were to come and say that, hey, I'm thinking about suicide or I'm feeling hopeless. I definitely wouldn't use that as a means to sway them to think differently. But I know there are some people that is their reason why they have not made that step to do anything to harm themselves because of their religious faith. In addition to having family members or children, they sometimes are able to kind of use that as a means to hold on to a little bit of hope and not take action on what they're thinking.
So let's wrap up a little bit, close, go towards closing.
Hmm.
And we wanted to make people aware. I feel that at some point we have Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We have other whatever awareness that we can think of. I think we as a society should have an ongoing effort to combat depression because it stems out and it spills over to a whole bunch of areas in our lives. I mean, you can be hooked on drugs.
Hmm.
That could be a cause of it. You can hurt people. You can kill, have a mass shooting
Hmm.
because you felt that you were gonna kill somebody that day because and kill yourself. Um, I am guilty as other people are. I am guilty of kind of brushing it off, being jaded by it all. And when someone commits suicide, I'm like, well, whatever. I always said I'll kill somebody else before I kill myself.
Hmm.
And that was kind of heartless to say, thinking about it in the bigger picture. And I feel like a lot of other people feel the way too. So as a society, how can we combat depression better than we do now? Because we definitely have to do something.
I think definitely continuing the conversation, and not just when something major happens in a tragedy of, oh, now we're going to talk about, this issue, now we're going to talk about, mental health and mental illness, and making sure that individuals are able to get the help that they need. I think definitely continuing the conversation beyond that, and also connecting. I think definitely in this day and age we've lost the art of connection and conversation. People are more isolated now than before because you can do everything from your home. You don't have to leave the house or anything. So I think in some ways with society we've kind of created this atmosphere of isolation. So I think definitely being connected to one another and really listening to one another. I know everyone is not capable of dealing with heavy emotion. And so for individuals, know your limits. Know what you can and cannot handle when it comes to, being a support to your friends. I think sometimes one of the best supports is having a resource. No, I can't help you with this, but I have a resource. I have a number. I know someone who is trained, a trained professional, or whatever the case may be, that might be able to give you what I can't. Because a lot of
Can I
times,
stop you right there?
sure,
For
go ahead.
Because I just want to interject, and from what you just said was is very important because in a younger age, I felt that I can cope with my depression by helping other people work through theirs. And you just said, be careful. I thought that I can handle a lot of level of emotion,
Hmm.
and I bit off more than I can chew. And it was, I mean, taking on that the burden that people feel, just trying to lift it off of their shoulders and put it on yours. A lot of people aren't built for that, and I realized I
Hmm.
wasn't either, and it
Hmm.
made it worse. So, and that's a hard place to be because it's a rock and a hard place. You want to help them, but you don't know if you really can because you're going through stuff, and it feels a little bit selfish, but you can't emotionally take it because it's gonna put you down lower than you already are.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's tough. So
Right, and at the same time, you may be doing them a disservice because you can't adequately be there in the way in which they need you because you're still dealing with your own personal stuff. So that's why I said, even if you can't do it, the best thing you can do is point them in the direction where they can get assistance.
honest, and that is you.
Yes, people like me. Definitely, know the resources, know the suicide hotline, which is 1-800-273-TALK. Know resources, know the individuals in your community that provide counseling services, provide support groups, provide educational talks. I think, we lack education in a lot of areas when it comes to mental illness and mental health awareness. So I think definitely educating the community, educating society about what it is and what it isn't, not being afraid of being a label, more or less, in order to get what you need, because mental illness is serious. It affects lives, not just the person who, again, is dealing with the illness, but also those who are connected to that person as well.
I also believe that it starts at home along with everything else. A lot of teenagers are affected by depression for different things when they're growing up, and I think it's very important. I want to challenge everybody that's listening and pass the word on that you do two things. You talk to each other as a family. You designate one person that you can go to and just let it out. Now, no judgment. You have a judgment-free zone, right? Judgment-free zone. If you don't want to talk to anybody else outside the family, keep it indoors if you want to, but talk to someone. Have someone in your family that can be that person for you, and it doesn't have to be the same person for everybody in the family because that's too much. But designate somebody in that home to where you can go to and talk, and that be your outlet.
Hmm.
That be your, like people have best friends. You like they talk and talk and let it all out. You don't have to have a friend to do that. That's why we have family structure. Now, if you have to have a friend to do that because your family sucks, that's a totally different show. We can talk about that at another time. But but and the other thing is, and I think it's very simple because in society, I feel that we are selfish people. We are focused on what we're focused on, and we don't care about the other person. We're just making sure that we get done what we need to get done, and push the other person aside. They'll be all right. But what I like to do is, especially with people I don't know, is ask them how they're doing. And I just ask them, how are you doing? You doing all right? Make up whatever terminology, whatever phrasing you want to do, but ask them how they're doing. Now,
And I'm going to interject.
okay.
If you ask the question, be
Mm-hmm.
prepared for the answer. Because
Exactly.
I think we've been trained to ask, how are you doing? And not even really listen to what's being said. So
Yes.
if you're going to ask the question, be prepared for the answer because it's not always okay or fine. So be aware of it. Again, that's why I said you have to know your own limitations.
Yes, and especially if you see someone going through something. Like if someone comes in looking sad, they're probably not just tired. They're probably going through stuff. They come into work, they're like, oh well, Bill looks kind of down. I don't know if his team lost yesterday or if whatever is going on in his household. I don't want to touch that. Just ask
Hmm.
Bill how he's doing. But if you gotta do it by the water cooler, the infamous water cooler, do it around there. If you want to build a lunch and you guys talk, let it out, just do that. If you can help one person, I challenge you to help one person. It's one person. They don't have to be on the edge of committing suicide. You can just be like, oh well, he's having a bad day. Just talk to the person. Acknowledge that you notice they're having a bad day, and don't judge them. Don't say, hey, Bill's having a bad day. Ha, I'm not messing with that guy. Everybody leave him alone. That's probably not what Bill needs. Bill probably needs a friend. I'm just talking about Bill. Um, but care. Show you
Hmm.
care about somebody other than yourself for once. And I feel that that would be a great start in society to pay it forward emotionally. If you're having a good day, help somebody else have a good day. You don't have to listen to their problems. You don't even have to ask them how they're doing. Just little things like pat them on the back. Tell me you're doing a good job. You're a great person. And that might be that sentence right there that keeps them from committing suicide that day. Because you don't want to
Mhm.
be the person that says something mean, and the next day you come in and you're like, well, Bill killed himself. Oh, was it something I said? And it could have been. You had your chance to save him, and you neglected to capitalize on that chance. So please, please, for your own selfish intent to make yourself feel better and sleep better at night, well, to do whatever you have to do. I don't care. But I challenge you to reach out to someone and help them. Help them. Just or say hi to somebody. It doesn't matter. How do you feel about that?
Mhm. Well, I think definitely do your part. You know, in when push comes to shove, when a person decides that they want to take their life, that's a decision that they made.
Mhm.
But you can say that, you know, I did my part. Whether or not I did call or, you know, I reached out to them. Oftentimes we look on the back end as far as, oh, well, what could I have done differently? You know, the woulda, coulda, shouldas is what we guilt ourselves with. Um, but I guess be in the moment, be present in the moment, utilize what you have in the moment in order to, like I said, stay connected with those around you, pay attention to their behaviors. You mentioned with children, you know, I think a lot of times children and their emotions get overlooked. So for those parents, for those who are engaged with children, really pay attention and help foster their emotional intelligence and their coping mechanisms at an early age to kind of help, you know, as they go through life, as they experience different things. You know, we all know that life isn't always pleasant, is not going to be this fairy tale that we were told when we were children, but we can give our children the tools necessary to navigate and maneuver through life circumstances. So again, like you said, you know, if you just stay aware, you know, stay informed, stay connected, continue to talk about different mental health issues. I think that would be a great start for everyone.
I agree. Well, I thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Um, I think that I hope that we made a great attempt, a successful attempt at bringing awareness. And you mentioned before
Hmm.
that we said we have to wait until something tragic happens. The only reason why I wanted to do this show to make awareness of depression and addiction stemming from depression is because while this is fresh in people's minds,
Hmm.
you gotta talk about it. You gotta get their attention while it's fresh. 6 months ago, this would people were like, well, I don't want to listen to that crap. Whatever. I don't want to hear that. I'm not watching that.
Hmm.
And whatever. It'll be a dead conversation. But while it's fresh in people's minds, I want you to take what we had to say tonight and raise awareness.
Hmm.
Talk to someone about it. If you're not depressed, then talk to someone about depression, and maybe you can pass on that knowledge or whatever you got from this show tonight. You can pass it on to the person, and maybe they can pay it forward and help someone that in their life that is suffering from depression, so they can
Hmm.
notice the signs, so they can pay attention. The red flags can be waved, and they're like, oh yeah, I get that. Maybe I should help.
Hmm.
Maybe I should help them get help. If you can't help them directly, help them get help. At least do that. So
Hmm.
I think we have been successful at doing
Yes.
so. I hope so. And do you want to tell people about your blog while you're here?
Sure. Before I do that, I do want to make mention that there is a national organization that focuses on suicide prevention. I believe every September they do a national walk. It's called Out of the Darkness. It helps to destigmatize suicide and also provides support to survivors of suicide. And again, I believe it's outofthedarkness.org. I'm sorry I did not research it earlier, but definitely kind of Google it, and I'm sure you'll find that information. But yes, I do have a blog that is affiliated with my practice. My practice name is Timeless Solutions Counseling Services, and you can find my blog at Timeless Counsel at WordPress.com, and I provide different information just in regards to loss and grief and different counseling issues. So definitely, if you are interested in hearing more of what I have to say and my thoughts and views on different counseling and mental health issues, please feel free to subscribe.
Awesome. 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 And you can always follow me. You know how to follow me. You're watching the show. So we're going to cut it off. You know, try to stay under an hour. We talk a lot. We hit an hour
We did it.
exactly. Well, you know, actually, we're under an hour because we started late. So we kept the promise. We kept the promise. So thank you. I will talk to you later, Tip.
Yes, sir.
All right. So you be cool. Thank you for being on the show again. This has been This Crazy World. No pun intended.
That's right.
Yeah, disclaimer. It's just a show name. Don't get butthurt over that. So, have a great evening. Pass the word on. And, hey, let's be happy.